in September in Lyon, and I hope that you guys watching are going to join us in the arena. It's going to be incroyable. And so is Group 3, because guys, the lobby list for this Sunday is absolutely stacked. I can't believe we could only send 10 of these trios through. So should we have a look at the names who are on the list? Because there's a very obvious one here, Mini Minor. We've been waiting for them, I feel like, the whole year so far, just 2 months of it. It is, of course, Veno, Vico and Flixi.
Yeah, this is a trio that everyone would say is the best trio in EU based off of performances this season. They've not placed outside of top 4 in the Division 1 finals. They won 2 of the weeks. They've had 7 wins out of a possible 32 games in Eval finals. This team are absolutely on fire. And I think, Levin, they're just 3 players are just mechanically ahead of so many other players in this lobby and indeed the region. Of course, combining the successful duo of Flixi and Vico, now adding someone like Veno, it's just done wonders for this trio. And now I think they're just on fire and they're going to perform very well today.
No, absolutely. You look at the way these guys have performed, it's been incredible since their inception. You know, I want to give Veno some credit because as much as he is also incredibly mechanical and an amazing fragger and fits in with those guys in that sense, he also adds an element of strategy and calmness and a game plan that I think they needed to utilize their high-flying fragging power as good as possible, right? He's been the one that's been IG'd and leading them, working with Coach Raz and developing a game plan for these guys that I think is going to catapult them, you know, towards the top in a group that everyone is saying is the most stacked group, the best group of all the groups in all the regions. The fact that these guys are probably the most standout team here, I think goes a long way in just letting you know how good these guys are.
Well, I feel like you can't talk about Veno without talking about another couple of names. So let's bring up the lobby list and you'll see exactly what I mean, because there's history here. Obviously, I'm talking about Cami and Seti, and they've picked up Chari, Levin, and this feels like a golden trio so far from how they've been playing this season.
Absolutely. I think everyone questioned who's going to be the third, right? Who do Cami and Seti pick up that fits in with their mold, what they're trying to do? And they tried a couple different people, and it was good to see them land on Chari because I think he does fit in with how they want to play, but also adds a bit of dynamism that they needed. He can get fraggy, right? He has a bit of firepower about him that I think they very much needed when you look at the biggest critique of Cami and Seti over the years of, you know, not enough firepower, especially with the direction the game's going with the likes of the Vicos, the Flixis, the Peterbots, you know, having as much success as they're having. They needed to add a bit of firepower. I think Chari gives that them.
Yeah, Cami and Seti are always a duo that had these interesting new strats, ways to get to that end game, and they're seemingly picking up where they left off with Chari now. They're obviously, you know, using that fishing really well. They were using the water boon really well when that was in competitive, of course, no longer is. So the way they're able to set up in mid-game for those surge bases, there's no better team really when it comes to actually saving those heals or actually getting those heals to actually use for later on in the game when they need to take that damage. So far, this trio have definitely been performing very well when it comes to the consistency side of things as well. They've had really good performances in Div 1 finals. They've only actually had 3 wins in all 5 of those Div 1 finals so far. So I'm expecting them to qualify through consistency today. Of course, they're going to put themselves in the position to get wins, but they're definitely a team that can perform very well today. Uncontested as well, which has been a big narrative for them this season.
Is Chari a big difference maker, do you think, for the consistency of these guys? Because normally when we're talking about Cami and Seti, we're kind of not too enthusiastic about them until we get to day 2 of the grand finals. But now we're predicting big things from the get-go, Levin.
I think when you looked at them last year, they struggled, I think, over the course of seasons, right? You know, there was a lot of questions around how much they were grinding the game together and whether or not there was the harmony we know Cami and Seti to have. And I think it is inspiring that they've, you know, looked a lot better early on in the season, right? They've been very strong. You know, you look
I just
Frankie, you're losing. You're losing. I'm trying to keep a straight face.
Oh, it's like, where's my analyst gone? But wait, Mini Minor.
I'm really embodying Mini Minor here, aren't I? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
With Cami and Seti, right, I think the big thing is that this season they've looked strong straight away, right? Compared to what we saw from them at times last season or last year. That is really inspiring, and I think they are very strong. The meta suits them really well. They're a team I expect to qualify through this group with ease.
Yeah, and I think a lot of their problems came from them being contested last year, right? They had a lot of situations where they're being contested, particularly by YZY, and of course that trio at the end of last year particularly, they didn't typically do very well. This year, this season so far, it seems like it's actually helping them a lot when they are contested. So it's really different to what we've seen from Cammy and Seti previously. Of course, winning so much off spawn against the French lads this year, it seems like that's being a very, very successful element of their game, which is not something we typically associate with Cammy and Seti.
Let's bring up the lobby list one more time, because there's a gentleman who actually picked up the Major One Finals title last year, but he was with Merstash, and now he's picked up Ping and Wox, and this is Malibuca 11-2K.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about this trio. This is a trio that I think needs a lot more respect on their names, because they have been incredibly impressive thus far. And if you've watched Malibuca this season, the guy's playing out of his mind. He's super motivated, as we know Malibuca always really is, right? He's always known for being the guy that's grinding the game, but he's been playing incredibly well. He's got two amazing players in Ping and Wox who are playing with him, who had a fantastic year in duos. And, you know, when you look individually at those two, Ping, very underrated player. I feel like he probably is the one that gets the least credit in this trio, but very solid, very consistent. And then you get to Wox. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. Malibuca obviously won the first major last year with Merstash, and I think Wox is probably the player that's going to be most capable of replicating what Merstash was able to do last year in terms of that firepower, being the guy that's putting in the damage, helping your team get out of tough scenarios. I really like this team landing at Night Shift Forest.
Yeah, and I think the makeup of the team is very similar to Vico, Veno, Flixi, right? You get a very successful duo in Ping and Wox, 7th in Major 3, 5th at Global Championships. Add on someone that has the IGL brain that can lead the team in Malibuca, but also has that fragging ability as well. And it seems like we have a bit of a recipe for success so far. Their performances have been very good, not necessarily at the same heights of Vico, Veno, and Flixi, but I agree. Coming out of Night Shift Forest, they seem to be very, very good coming out of there. They seem to have the Storm Surge strategies on point, and the way that they can actually go around and sort of loot around the area seems to be really working out really well for them, particularly when it comes to Storm Surge as well.
Well, congratulations, boys. You've got me incredibly excited for Group 3. But let's head over to our casters, the Best Taco and Takata, because I know they've got some thoughts they'd also like to share.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Look, Mini Levin, you're talking about Malibuca, you're talking about Cammy, you're talking about Veno, a lot of veterans in Fortnite, but we got players like Hen in this lobby that has 3 FNCS wins by himself. I mean, that's more than all the players you mentioned. We've even got Shimoki and 2, sure, also 3 FNCS wins as a trio. I mean, we've got a lot of big names competing, which is exactly why people are saying, Taco, that this is the most stacked group in EU.
Yeah, and easily one of my favorite things about all those players you just mentioned is that with the reintroduction of this trio's competitive format, we are just in general seeing a massive resurgence of not just old guard veteran players, but also players that have kind of took a little bit of a hiatus from the competitive scene, and now they want to bring it back. Now they want to strut their stuff. They want to show that they're still capable, and I think it's been really cool as well when you take this multitude of experience from such veteran players like the Hens, and then you combine them with even some of the new school kind of up-and-comers and things like that. So as a whole, Takata, there's a lot to be excited for, and knowing that today is easily considered like one of the most competitive group stages that we have seen so far, it's going to be on fire.
Yeah, I mean, the most FNCS Finals appearances. We're back in trios, so we're seeing a lot of the OGs. It's what you love to see, but there's still more to break down. So let's head back to the desk before we get into the first match.
Much, guys. Now, we've spoken about some trios that we're expecting very big things from as we head onto the battle bus in a few moments. But now we've got another couple of trios who we could see big things from today, but we're not maybe so confident about them. And the first is a trio where we've got to see Mongraal and Savage stick together and pick up Panzer. And I suppose the first thing I'm wondering, Levin, is are you surprised that Mongraal and Savage did stick together after last year?
Not really too much. I think, a lot of people obviously tried to sort of get an understanding into what the thought process was there, but they've been consistent and clear about why they stuck together and that they enjoy playing with each other. I think the biggest thing for me when I'm looking at this team is just the fact that coming into the season, they looked really strong. Like they were performing very well. They were landing at the bird. Then they obviously have the typical Mr. Savage problems where he's just super contested. Obviously the bird got a bit of a temporary nerf, right, where the metal was gone, and so they moved over to Shattered. They were landing at different spots. start. Then they end up getting contested there a bunch, right? And so you see the sort of numbers here in terms of like their placements while being contested, just not as good, right? Typically, you know, these guys are more successful when they are uncontested. And so even though they've not necessarily been performing as well, like they missed the last couple divisional finals and whatnot, they're uncontested in this group, Frankie, which to me is a very good sign because they're back at the Bird, where the Bird now has a bit more metal than it did before. I think this time around, I'm actually more confident than I, would have thought just looking at the form of these guys in recent weeks, Mini. I want to know how you feel sort of there. Like, they genuinely have a good chance to come out of this group, I'd say.
Yeah, 100%, and particularly because of the format as well. I think they're a team that will win a game today. I don't think they'll be coming out of there consistently. I think they'll struggle when it comes to those fights. Particularly maybe off spawn against Malibuca's team if they do decide to rotate on down there and fight them. But I think they will have that one game, that one moment where we've seen from Mongrel and Mr. Savage previously in duos, they can pick up a win. And particularly in Panzer's case, I've been really, really impressed with how he's leading the team. He's sort of taken that IGL role, it seems like, and just allowing Mongrel and Mr. Savage to sort of bounce off each other and frag. And I'm really impressed with how he's actually leading the team, putting them in really good positions and really good situations. And as you mentioned, they've moved back to the Bird. I think they played better out of the Bird. We're seeing it in the stats there as well. Uncontested, they do seem to perform better. So I think it all sort of points to a victory royale for this team today, and I think they can definitely do it.
Is this a team that's going to get a victory royale once like the big names have gone through, or do you see them potentially taking one over the likes of Malibuca, over the likes of Venno? Mini?
I think, it all depends on zones for me for this team. It depends on how that off-spawn situation goes when it comes to Storm Surge. As I mentioned, Malibuca could definitely be a problem there for them from the north. If the zones start pulling north, I think they won't have that engagement, right? So they can have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to Storm Surge. So I think it doesn't matter who else is in the lobby, they can definitely pick up a win.
Now, I know that there are some fans watching right now who are just like, when are you going to get to this trio? When are you going to get to this trio? And here's the thing, this trio were right at the bottom of the teams who actually managed to scrape through into the group stage. In 99th position were our Danish boys Thomas HD, Trippin and Fredoxy. They kept us waiting to see if they were going to make it through, Levin, and luckily they made it. I'm just wondering why on earth it was so difficult.
Yeah, they've had some struggles in recent weeks. They've not looked as strong as they maybe did near the start of the season. But it's weird because I look at Thomas HD and all of his experience and some of his recent performances, and he's been playing absolutely top still, right? You know, you look last year, the criticism of Thomas and Queasy at times were that they didn't do as well in the cups outside of just the actual major finals. And some of that you could attribute to maybe Thomas not having that same sort of firepower that some of the other young fraggers in the region had. But he's been playing out of his mind. I feel like he's playing incredibly well, and so I look at this trio and I go, things in theory should be going a lot better for these guys. With that being said though, Mini, I look at the scenario in this lobby, I look at how the lobby's shaping up. They're obviously landing towards boxcars. Pumped Plant is contested, and so I think that helps them a lot when it comes to Surge, right? In the recent eval final, they had that same exact scenario where they're landing brutal boxcars, Pumped is contested, and they were able to get so much free early damage just out of that Pumped fight that it led to them having success in this lobby. I think they'll try to replicate that here today, and that should in theory give them enough to get out of this group.
Yeah, well, they're the second most experienced team in the lobby in terms of those FNCS finals, so you'd expect them to be in the Major 1 finals when it comes around to it, but they just haven't had those performances. And as you mentioned, those Storm Surge elements off spawn, when they're getting those hills outside of their drop spot, sometimes it works out for them, sometimes it's not, but I think when they're getting that Storm Surge early on towards the north at Pump Power, that's going to benefit them so much, because that's where they've been struggling when it comes to that early stage of the game. I looked in the Div 1 finals in week number 5 as well. They were switching up drop spots a lot during those final sort of 5 games, and I think it's just something that they're not really too confident at Brutal Boxcars at the moment. I don't think they're really enjoying the drop spot as much as they would have liked, so maybe we might see a little bit of a switch of drop spot from them today. We'll have to wait and see, but if they can play their Storm Surge well, they'll be just fine because they're just that good.
Well, we don't have to wait any longer because we are ready to board the battle bus for Group 3, so let's head over to the Best Taco and Takata.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Look, we got to lock in, Taco. We're in literally the most stacked group. It's happening now in terms of titles, in terms of FNCS finals appearances, in terms of stats. This group is literally at an all-time high. I believe a majority, if not almost all the trios competing today have made it to an FNCS finals before, so we are in for a show.
Yeah, something like 384 finals appearances spread across the board here, Takada. And what's even more incredible to think about is knowing that there's only going to be 10 places left for these players as far as group number 3 is concerned to try and make it without having to go through the last chance qualifier, because that is still on the horizon for any mishaps that might happen today. But we're going to start things off hot here. Lobby 1 ready to go.
A lot of the top teams aren't contested today, but there are some interesting things going on. I believe Artskill, Misha, and Khan are going to be doing something where they like land Twinkle Terrace into maybe switching drop spots if Malabuka or Vico end up winning a match. As a quick reminder, to qualify today, you either have to get a victory royale in one of the 5 matches or place top 5 on that consistency leaderboard after the day concludes. But we're going to be starting right off in an early game engagement.
Yeah, and it comes as no surprise either that players would look to try and contest this position here at Warriors Watch. Everybody wants to be the team that actually gets to stake their claim on their preference. Burke, though, trying to open things up here with a good pump shot. Instead, just going to opt to try and break through the roof of some of these buildings, get a little bit of material count going. It's going to be hard to hold down any sort of semblance of a fight if you don't have the mats to back it up. Unfortunate here as well for Lyric that he's going to opt to have to just use both of those splashes on himself. Can't find an opportunity to get with his team, and his backup was very much needed because Rash has already been eliminated from this exchange.
Yeah, put into a 2 versus 3 now. Normally when you're thinking about trios, thinking about drop spots, it's about claiming space, but in drops like Warriors Watch, where you have that big main building with the majority of the loot, sometimes it's just a battle for it instead of that kind of claiming different little subsections of the drop spots. But unfortunately for the opposing team here, it is going to be a 3. Oh wow, I thought it was going to be, 3 versus 1, but it looks like one of the players did get knocked down. Should be able to take him back up here, though, if Burke isn't able to apply enough pressure. Shots coming through, but so far this is looking very difficult for Burke.
Still a chance for Burke to be a huge problem, though, just causing delay, causing these teams to not have the luxury of just opting for that loot path that they're hoping for, and forcing them to burn a lot of these early heals that they had initially found at this main building here at Warriors Watch. Burke still just running around the upstairs case, but it's not going to be enough. 1 versus 3, and the 3 will eventually close in. Some really nice early surge damage, though, taking place here at Warriors Watch, and circumstances continue to unfold even on opposite ends of the map here. Cap Factory, Shimoki getting pressured pretty heavily, doing what he can to sit inside of his box. Opens up, and that's a massive pump shot to turn things around. Shimoki, this is where experience comes into play, but can he get these revives? The third party already closing in. He needs to at least get one more teammate with him. He's not healthy enough to take this exchange alone.
He did pick up Toos that had lower HP, so gonna have a bit of time to breathe. But the issue is, without any shields, just being 1 shot away from getting eliminated, it's gonna be difficult to outrun this one, as Toos is most likely running low on materials as well. The good news is that Oni Mask is really saving the day here.
Problem, though, Toos hasn't had a chance to actually get any sort of shield recovery. A singular tag is all it would take, just about. Finally going to have an opportunity to get a little bit of white heals going. But Veek still trying to scout him out. Bush checking instead, eats a tag from the distance, recognizing the fact that this duo, while they might be on the run hanging out by Salty Docks, they're still going to be drawing attention from elsewhere. Mid-map position closing in now. It's Reskar.
Reskar, Della, and Focus. Looks like from a 3rd party to a 4th party. Hitting some nice shots, cracking his opponents now. Could open up that option to go in and play a bit more aggressive. They want to get more information, though. In these early game battles, you only have so much info from the feed. After you get some shots, you can tell, okay, are they cracked? Do they have spare shields? but it's difficult to know when you kind of want to fully commit to a fight like this.
The main pull here, though, is that Revskar was able to take this hill position, so he's got a really nice line of sight to help support Focus and Della as they continue to try and see what they can actually scope out from this initial exchange. Della, though, without that Void Oni mask, gonna opt to just try and pick up a little bit more Parmet material, farm some brick, and regroup. Think that they may have struck just a moment too soon. We're hoping that Vik and his team would be a little bit more out of position when they started that engagement.
Looking over at Veno, though, I did see that he got an elimination onto Clown. So they have rotated out of their drop spot quite quickly and efficiently, and now I'm not sure if they're going to look to close this one out, but so far they are with the upper hand. But this seems to be a different trio than Clown's trio, actually. So I'm not sure what actually went on here. Maybe it was most likely a third party that they kind of picked off one of the players from, and now they're trying to see if they want to commit to the next one.
Well, Veno, he doesn't mind playing from inside the storm as long as Veno, Vico, and Flixie close out this exchange. That's going to be more than enough surge to kind of carry them through their mid-game rotational path and playing closer to that dead side. One up, though, trying to be wary, knows that Veno is kind of running around the rooftops, creating a lot of space up above. The opposing trio just doing what they can to stay as close-knit as possible. They don't want to give even the slightest advantage towards Veno and Vico.
And having won 10 out of the 18 EU finals since November, you can see how dominant this trio really has been, why they are one of the favorites going into the most stacked group on Europe. And we're going to get to see exactly why that is if they decide to close this fight out. But as Zone starts pulling, it's only second zone, which means, you know, you can still tank a bit. It's not too dangerous to stay in a little longer, especially if you get a benefit from it.
The thing is, Vico, Veno, and Flixie, they kind of have all angles shut off. It doesn't really give a whole lot of wiggle room for 1UP's team to actually try and escape. I mean, two aerial perspectives, they're going to force them even further back, and they can continue to just try and lock them from entering on this edge of zone towards the northwest side of the map. But also Vico still seemingly trying to make sure with these Oni TPs that he's keeping, again, just that general line of sight, does not want to let them go for free.
And back over to Cammy, Seti, and Shari. As you can see in this quick stat, have placed first, second, and third in the 3 divisional finals that they were uncontested. This is players, Cammy and Seti, generally when they were uncontested in previous majors. I mean, it was all about consistency. And having that option to qualify today from the top 5 in consistency, giving them good odds.
Plus, they were already starting to establish their surge base right above the all-you-can-catch, hoping that in a solid mid-map position, not only they're going to get plenty of fishing going on, but also that surge tags from just looking around the general area, knowing that players are going to be rotating through, especially from those northern portions of the map. Magic Mosses, though, decent amount of teams still kind of left behind, still trying to figure out what the best path forward might be. Seems like they're all just encountering each other, and a lot of times I think in these opening lobbies, Takata, teams will have a tendency to play things a little bit slower, trying to, you know, just kind of dip their toes in the water and gauge the temperature check.
It also depends like what game we're in, right? This is the first match, so leaderboard hasn't even been made yet based off the first game, so you don't know. Later on, you kind of know which teams need to get a victory royale versus which ones have to just kind of continue playing consistent. But when you're in that first match, anything can really happen. So everybody's just playing a little extra safe, not wanting to take those big fights. But who knows, maybe you have some trios that their game plan is literally to make sure they're as stacked as possible going into late game, even if it means taking those risks to try and have the highest odds of getting the victory royale. But Vico, Veno, and Flixie, they are still in zone trying to kind of take shots at these trios that have yet to rotate.
And this is something that's also relatively common to see coming out of Flooded Frogs. There is just so much resources readily available at the POI itself. Even with this invading trio, Veno, Vico, and Flixie can still afford to spend a decent amount of time kind of hanging out in the storm, looking for surge tag damage, and then doubling back to this Flooded Frogs location for the leftover heals that they will usually leave behind, because you can't carry everything with you, even in a trio.
Right.
But something else to consider after, Queasy, Swizzy, and Murstache, it's a common concept that there's always the friendly level of competition. When you see Queasy qual immediately in that first lobby, actually hold that thought though, Veno in a spot of trouble.
Yeah, be careful on just the sliver of H3 getting out, but Arc is actually going to be able to knock down Flixie. It was to the storm after that initial damage that they were able to do. Doesn't even have a Sentinel pump shotgun in hand. Vico, on the other hand, with a legendary one. Veno with an epic one. I mean, in terms of loot, they have the upper hand here. Maybe the pressure, though, on them. It looks like Veno isn't just going to let that one slide after they took down his teammate. Now with all the players back up, 0 materials to work with, this is a position that is incredibly dangerous.
Veno looking for the side jump, and he's going to find it. Arc will be put down after that initial attempt to bring out Vico, but Vico as well ensuring that the escape is futile. It's a nice confirmation of eliminations for sure from this team. A little bit shakier than what they probably would have wanted to start things off with, but still, that's a team that's extraordinarily confident. The only thing I was going to add is that I wonder how badly Veno wants this first lobby of the day, Victory Royale, considering that he saw his friends yesterday do the same.
Got me a little scared, not gonna lie. I was like, well, what's going on here? This is not what I would have expected, but they finished it off, they closed it out. It's what matters. As we're looking at Mongraal, Mr. Savage, and Panzer now. Fan favorite going into today. Love to see them qualify, as they are choosing to go more of kind of the split storm surge base route, using those Oni masks to cover a lot of kind of vision on the trios rotating in their surrounding areas. And if any of them get pushed, they can always just Oni mask to each other. So a good setup for that kind of safe damage in the mid game here.
Ooh. Danish boys getting active though. Thomas found some nice shots with that mythic AR over by Foxy Floodgate, but knowing that there's another trio that they're going to essentially have to cross against, they want to try and push that team further out to make it less likely that they'll be compromised, especially factoring that Trippern doesn't have one of those Void Oni masks, so the rotations I think are going to be, I don't want to say compromised, but it's certainly a more difficult comparison to teams that can just more readily choose their location destination.
Heading over to Shogun's Arena, though. I see Mongraal up top. There is another trio, though. It's Artist, who's what looks like might have been an engagement. I mean, they have 2 eliminations already. One of the players, no shield to work with, has to recuperate that, but I don't think there's any other trio that's kind of contesting them at this point. I did see Pixel, though. There might be a duo close by.
Can be super annoying, though, when you're trying to deal with the actual boss here at Shogun's Arena, and then there's just a player or two kind of hiding out on the top of this arena with you, but Artist seems to at least be wary of the mountain range in the background. That's probably going to be the biggest issue here, and it's Panzer who's actually surge basing up top, so when they actually look to try and take down that Shogun, they likely will also have to make sure that they're blocking off their perspective so that Panzer doesn't get any additional free surge tag damage on them. Worse still would be if they find like a knock or so and they can just opt for a key circumstance.
Focus, though, is going to find a knock now. Looking to continue forwards. Good amount of damage. Zone is the only issue. A lot of trios will be looking back at them when they try to rotate in, so they have to keep that in mind when continuing with this fight. Della incredibly low. Good news is Repscar does have some chug splashes. They're going to recuperate it and now hopefully go for some sort